Hi, this is Jeff from dchoneybees.com. I first want to thank all of you who have been to our website and supported us in our mission to put bees on the rooftops of Washington, D.C. homes. Uh, Today we are making bee fondant. Why bee fondant? Well, first, it's an invert sugar, which means that rather than just plain sucrose, which is table sugar, it's a mixture of glucose and fructose, which is much more like honey and more digestible to the bees. Secondly, the crystals in the fondant are much smaller and make them more easily accessible by the honeybees. And finally, it's soft and easy to work with to allow you to make patties and put them on the top bars of your hives. So let's try making fondant. Okay, let's get started. What we have here is approximately 4 cups of water boiling on the stove in about a 8-quart um, pasta size pot. We have some Karo syrup, which we're going to use about a quarter cup of that. The juice of half a lemon. Coffee for me for sustenance. And these are 2 4-pound bags of granulated sugar from the grocery store. This will make about an 8-pound batch of fondant based on the 4-pound bags. You can also substitute these 4-pound bags for 5-pound bags. I just found that 8 pounds is a better size batch for me to make based on the size of my pot. We are going to add the lemon juice. And what the lemon juice does, by the way, is because of its acidity, the acid in the lemon juice helps to invert the sugars. And we're going to add the sugar now. And the sugar that we're adding, table sugar, is basically sucrose. And the acid in the lemon helps to break some of that sucrose down into glucose and fructose, which is more digestible to the bees. So we've added the sugar. Let me get a spoon. And then we're just going to stir this up until it dissolves. By the way, the corn syrup that I put in there was about a quarter of a cup. The measurements don't need to be exact for any of this, with the exception of the lemon. If you add too much lemon to this batch, you can invert more sugar than you need, and that will prevent crystallization, and you'll end up with a big gooey blob. And I will share what that looks like with you because I did that yesterday. And it's still it's still usable. It's just not quite exactly how I would like my fondant to be as far as moldability and holding its shape when I stick it on top of the top bars. So I'm going to stir this until it dissolves, and I'll be back for part 2 momentarily. Okay, let's review. I've got a thermometer that I've got in here into the solution, and I've got a handy dandy electronic thermometer gauge here. It shows here it's reading 242 degrees. I know that's a little bit off. It's a little higher than it's reading. So we're right around 238, which is where we want to be. What we've made is a super saturated solution of the water and the sugar. The glucose, or the corn syrup that we put in there, will help prevent rapid crystallization of the syrup. And as it cools, we will let it cool down to about 180 degrees, and then we will stir it to create crystals, but as crystals at a very small scale. So again, this was 4 cups of 4 cups of water, about a quarter of a cup of corn syrup, the juice of half a lemon, and 8 pounds of 8 pounds of table sugar. And so I'm going to turn the heat off. It's been cooking for about 10 minutes. It took about 10 minutes for it to come to a boil and drive off enough water for that temperature to come up to 240 degrees. And after I turn it off, I'm going to move it to the back and then not touch it at all until it gets to about 180 degrees as it cools. Okay, our mixture or syrup has cooled to 180 degrees, and I've transferred it, as you can see, from my pot into my mixing bowl. And I'm going to now mix it. Let me turn that off for a second. The reason for mixing and putting this in the mixer is threefold. First, it allows it to start cooling even more as the syrup is stirred. Secondly, it incorporates air into the syrup to give it a better consistency and structure. And finally, as it mixes and the crystals start to form in the syrup, the mixing action keeps the crystals small and thus makes the fondant more less crystallized and more smooth. So we've been stirring this for about 15 minutes on low first, and then we put it on high. The low was just to allow some of the heat to dissipate, and the high was to incorporate some more air. And you can see how the syrup has lightened in color a bit, and you can see some bubbles off the top. But if I touch the side, it's still very warm. It's probably still 150 or so degrees. I can't hold my hand there. So we've got some more cooling to do. But I just wanted to show you the process in mid-stir. Okay, the fondant has been running on and off for several hours now while it cools down. It's still warm to the touch, but you can see that the color has lightened. My mixer is straining, and you can see the consistency, which is runny, translucent, extremely sticky. And in my last batch that I did yesterday, that did not really crystallize much in the same way this did, it will remain gooey, although when it gets to be sort of a temperature in the refrigerator or outdoors, it will at least solidify it enough so that it doesn't soak through things. After I've blended or mixed the fondant and incorporated some air into it, I poured it into this 1-gallon container and let it cool. And you can see it has the consistency of taffy or heavy icing. Okay, so now I've covered it, and I am going to set it outside to let it firm up in the cold air. But I did want to point this out because this is a rather ingenious invention, this 1-gallon narrow profile tray. This was made by Rubbermaid, and it's called a take-along. I bought it at Target I bought 2 of them at Target for $4 yesterday. And I'll tell you what I do. What I did just now with the other batch that was this runny is I went to the hive, put a medium hive body on top of the top bar, the uppermost brood chamber, and then I put some newspaper across it, sticking out the edges, just one layer, and then I took the top off and turned this upside down right on top of the newspaper on top of the top bars. Presumably the bees will chew through the newspaper and get to the fondant. The fondant won't soak through into the bottom bars because it is still a little gooey and a little viscous. And then I just threw the top in there as well because they'll clean that off too. So rather than have to mess with touching it or portioning it between 2 hives, just take this container, turn it upside down on top of the top bars, put your top back on, and walk away. And come check it again in a couple of weeks to see if they've eaten it. So we will figure out whether this methodology has worked for me, and I'd be happy to share my findings with you in a couple of weeks to see if they've eaten it. Okay, so let's recap. We started with 8 pounds of sugar, about half a lemon's worth of lemon juice, about a quarter of a cup of Karo corn syrup, uncolored, and about 4 cups of water. We dissolved the sugar and in the water, lemon juice, cornstarch mixture to make a very thick syrup. We brought it to a boil until it reached about 238 to 240 degrees. We let it cool undisturbed on the stovetop until it cooled to 180 degrees. Then we put it in the blender and slowly blended it. I'm sorry, not the blender, the mixer, and slowly mixed it until the sugar syrup cooled and air was incorporated into the mixture. And then we put it in a plastic 1 gallon feeder, plastic 1 gallon container, which we will allow to cool, and then put the container right on top, face down, on top of the top bars, with a sheet of newspaper in between to feed the bees in this cold winter. Now, interestingly enough, I was just up on the roof, and it worked out very well with my batch I did last week. As far as placing it, we will check and see if they've taken it. Today, although it was 46 degrees outside, there was quite a lot of activity out of the hives. There was still the cluster inside when I went to go place the fondant, but there was quite a lot of activity around the hive entrance. So it must have been warm enough because of the radiated roof heat to allow them to, at least some of them, to get out and move around. So was it all worth it? You hear a lot of debate whether people use fondant or just spread plain table sugar on top of newspaper on top of the hives. I don't know. This took a very long time to do, and it takes a lot of focused attention at times. So I'm going to try the sucrose method on 2 other hives that I haven't treated yet. And one of the complaints you hear about the sucrose is that the bees may not be able to smell it, and that's why they don't necessarily eat through the newspaper to get at it. I'm going to mix some of that sucrose with some lemon peel to add some scent to the sugar and see if that works, and I'll let you know how it turns out. Thank you for watching this video. Please go to our website, www.dchoneybees.com, and please support our blog and our mission to get more bees on more rooftops in Washington, D.C.